go live. Sorry, I'm not. As you can see, I'm not in my office. I'm not at home.
Ah,
Um, yes, it's still part of preparations for resumption. So I'm in another school.
uh-huh.
Great. So we are live now. So I just
Okay.
requested for an office to have my session, and they graciously provided one.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're live. We're good to go. Let's see now. We're live on 3 channels: LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram.
Got it.
Beautiful. Let's see now. So I'll just say a few words about my guests. I trust that we'll have people join us shortly. But I like to keep to time. So if we said we'll start at 12, then 12 it is, which interestingly is 7 p.m. for you, right?
Yes, it's big. That's a little bit of a time difference.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to you, Kelly,
Thank you. Good
and to
evening or
those who might be
good
joining
afternoon
from
to you.
Belgium. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me. On this call today, I have the amazing Kelly Ridings. He's been in education for over 30 years, and I can tell you that he comes with a wealth of experience. I have my notepad with me and my pen because I'm sure I'm going to keep writing and writing till we're done today. Kelly is such a loaded powerhouse, and I'm delighted to be on this call with him today. The goal is to help educators and parents by extension prepare for an impactful school year. In days past, in years past, oh, it's resumption, and then we just go into school, and then no plan, nothing. We just come in and we start. But life has changed, things have evolved, and we are now more conscious of the impact of setting goals, having a structure to the way we deliver, to the way we do our work, and we have been seeing results. So I thought to myself, there might still be people who don't know how to prepare for resumption, who don't know what to do. Why don't we give them something to do, something to go with, and help them get ready? So that is what we're doing today. Okay, and my guest is okay. My guest is an amazing powerhouse, like I mentioned, the amazing Kelly Ridings, who interestingly is in China, right?
Yes, and yes,
Yes.
I am. I
Are you
live in
still in
Dalian.
Shanghai?
Right. I used to live in Shanghai, and I was there
So
for
he's in
many years.
Shanghai,
I just moved.
China.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how he does it. I remember telling him one day that he's quite bold. I don't think I want to live outside my native country, but that's me. There are lots of people who live in other countries, but he's done that for at least 11 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yes.
back then
He's
in
lived
China,
and
just
worked
12.
there. Yes. And he's become so comfortable in China that. Do you speak Chinese?
Well, it's Idian, which means a little bit. So I speak survival Chinese. At first, when I came here, I took classes and then I realized, well, that just wasn't going to happen. So I just accept that that's what it is. But now with
Mm,
smartphones and all, it's okay. I don't have to know as much Chinese. So, but I know enough to get
true.
along okay.
Yes, you just need the basics and you're fine. Okay, so now that we're talking about you, can you tell us a bit about yourself? How long you've been in education and how you found yourself in education?
Well, when I grew up, I always wanted to be a teacher, and I loved playing school growing up as a kid. But I always wanted to be the teacher. I didn't want to be the student as much. So it's always been something that I've wanted to do. And nearly all my life, I can remember wanting to be a teacher. Just a few other times I thought about some other things. So it's just something within my being. I think that's just who I am, is to be a teacher and an educator. And I really love working with students, and whether those students are in our schools, like our kindergarten through grade 12 schools, or whether they're in college, I enjoy that as well. And I enjoy working with staff, even as helping to mentor and help them to grow as well. So I like helping people, and so that's meant a lot to me. So that's what I've spent my career doing for over 32 years now at that. And I worked around the world. I worked in the U.S., which is where I'm from, but I've also worked in Mexico and in South Korea, and now in
Wow.
China. And I've been here in China now for 12 years, and I'm a permanent resident here. So this is home for me now, and I'm not planning to go anywhere else. So this is it. So I really enjoy the global lifestyle, and living and being a global citizen. That's really important for me.
You really are a global citizen. Wow, all those pieces. And you know the interesting part, we have something else in common. I started role playing teaching from when I was a child.
Oh,
When I was
really?
7, 8, yes. I remember during my dad's 40th birthday, the children who came with their parents, I gathered them in a room and we role played teacher and pupils. And I was the teacher. I always wanted to be the teacher. I didn't want to be the pupil. So hearing you say that you did the same thing just makes me laugh, because growing up, when people would say, "Oh, you'll make a good teacher," I'll tell them, "No, I don't want to be a teacher." My mom is a retired teacher, and having a government teacher, we call it government teacher, having worked in public schools and all that, we could tell that teachers didn't have much of a value. I mean, growing up, it didn't look like a lot of value was placed on teachers. So I didn't want to be a teacher because of that. I used to tell people, no, I want to earn a lot of money, so I can't be a teacher. I'm too strict, I can't be a teacher because I won't allow parents to get away with the wrong things. I won't allow any parents to talk to me anyhow. But look at me today. I am teaching, and I started teaching right after the university. Because during my mandatory 1 year service, I worked in a TV station presenting
Oh,
a program. And so
uh-huh.
my audience was a group of school children. I would go to the school a day or two before the recording to prepare them for the recording, transport them to the studio. We record about 3 or 4 episodes at once, and then their parents will pick them up from the studio. By the time I finished my service here, I just felt it's not so bad to work with children after all. Maybe I should give it a try. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'll teach for a year or two, and then I will go look for something that will help me make lots of money. I was always thinking about that, because growing up, it was commonplace to hear that teachers in the public service were being owed salaries, or their salaries were delayed, and private schools were not that many. But now private schools are everywhere. I have always worked in the private sector. I never worked in the public sector.
Uh-huh.
And of course, education is not what it used to be. Things are so much different. We are right at the front of the change that is taking place. As the world is evolving, education is evolving as well, and we are right there along with the rest of the world, leading the change and doing great things. So it's interesting to see that what I thought I couldn't do, that I'll run away from, is what I'm doing now. When I took my teacher training certification, the lady who came for the second observation, so there were two observations during the teaching practice where an inspector would observe. The lady that came for the second and final wrote on my, what's it called now? Wrote in the logbook, a born teacher. That was her final comment for me. When I saw that, I was like, oh gosh, this thing found me eventually. Because there were a lot of obstacles in my way for that particular presentation. But somehow, first she was supposed to come and observe in a private school, but she had a lot of candidates, and that was the last day. So she called me and said that her second to the I was the last candidate for the day, and that was the
Oh,
last day of the program. that the second to the last candidate worked in a public secondary school. That was not too far, but still quite a distance from where I was. That she couldn't go to that area and then come to where I was because that other area was traffic prone. But she was closer to that school. That she didn't want to know how I would do it. I either found my way down to that school or she would just give me any grade. I didn't want that. Thankfully, I had a car, so I drove down. Now, the issue was I had planned to use a projector. And then I also had some audiovisual aids I created. But in a government school, there was no projector. Now they're working on things like that. But that day, there was no projector, one. Two, they had, I think, 4 classes in one room. So my lesson plan was designed to teach a year 5 class. And then I was asked to come and teach a senior secondary class on short notice, with half of the resources I planned gone. No projector, no interactive board. And these were available in my school. These were part of my lesson plan. No, it wasn't for, but I delivered. I got in there, saw those tall students, some of them taller than I was, some uncooperative. Oh, we don't have English today. I said, yes, I understand. But today you're going to assume that you have English because I'm going to teach you English. So if you don't have your notes, I want to believe you have a jotter. If you don't have a jotter, ask your mates to give you a few sheets of paper. I know you have a pen. I made them write. I put them in groups for collaborative tasks. And then I identified the troublemakers in the class. I made them the team captains for those groups. So they had no choice but to participate because they had to present for their groups. And I was going to award points. So they wanted to win. I just appealed to that part of them that would want the self-acclaim and would want their classmates to see them as somebody intelligent. In fact, one of them, I heard he was quite notorious. And I think he wasn't quite bright, but I told him he could do it. And then I whispered a few tips into his ears, and he was able to deliver. His classmates were wow. I guess that's why the lady had to give me that comment. When I was leaving, many of them came to my car to say hello to me and tell me they enjoyed my class.
Oh, that's great.
It was fun. But I was terrified after what he told me, but I just told myself, nothing's going to stop me. I can do this. They are learners too, So it's quite interesting. So
we never know. We never know what's going to happen in our career sometimes, and it's just a matter of, okay, you just got to think quick, and you did that in that experience, and your grade 5 turned into high school kids instead. So it's just that's what happens sometimes in our career.
Yeah, true. Okay, so let's move on to the first question, or the second rather. What are some of the challenges that you have faced, or teachers that have faced at the beginning of the school year?
Well, I think that probably one of the biggest things that I see teachers face today, because I've spent most of my career as an administrator, so what I'm watching is seeing teachers in both from primary, elementary, up through high school, and time is certainly a big thing for them, especially at the very beginning of the year. There just isn't enough time to get things done, and it's especially hard at the beginning when you're trying to get your rooms organized and get the classroom and all the materials and everything that has to be done. And it's natural that when we start at the beginning of the year that we have a lot of ideas at the beginning of the school year. We have a lot of new ideas. We want to put them in place. And sometimes there are just so many things that have to be done that it's hard to make all of that happen. And so teachers sometimes get really stressed about that. And I find that they're try to do too much at once. And so it's a really difficult thing to start when the beginning of the year happens like that. Our focus just becomes spread too thin, and we're just not then able to get as much done as we want to get done. And when that happens, then we don't feel very successful in what we've are trying to accomplish, because obviously we haven't been able to do it all. So then we're disappointed. So that's how a lot of times teachers start the beginning of the year, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that really it's about prioritizing and figure out what is it that we have to get done. What do I need to have done in order to get that school year going? And then after that, I have to think about, okay, now what's the nice to have things that I can do now that I have a little bit of time and I've finished some of those main priorities instead. And so that, I think, is a good way to try to go about approaching working with the beginning of the year. How about you?
Okay.
What do you find?
Some of these things you have shared really happen as well. We have so many things to do, and one can get overwhelmed. I noticed that the first week tends to be more stressful than other weeks. Teachers resume a week or a few days ahead of learners, but let's compare a few scenarios. I realized that when we have a lot of inserts planned, along with preparing their rooms for resumption, teachers are more stressed. So over time, I try to reduce the number of inserts at the beginning of the term, and I'd rather spread it across that term. But when we have inserts, we have setting up rooms. By Friday, we leave late, and then on Monday morning, teachers are looking harassed and tired. Meanwhile, they have just come back from maybe 2 or 3 weeks of vacation. I say 2 or 3 weeks because here in Nigeria, many schools have holiday lessons that we call summer lessons. And so those between the last day of the holiday lessons and the first day of staff resumption is usually about 2 weeks. So they come in on the first day of insets looking fresh, looking relaxed. But by the first day of pupil resumption, they are looking stressed out because they have had to prepare their rooms, prepare resources, finish up with lesson plan for those who haven't finished up. That can be a lot. But I have some comments here, so let me just read so that our readers, our audience, pardon me, know that we are with them. Good afternoon, Dawood Olayinka. Thank you. I see you, Neka Okafo. Olaomi Heavens. You wanted to be a teacher too. Now you train. So you're also a teacher. I mean, a trainer is a teacher as well. Oh, wow. The stories are taking you back. My story is taking you back to your teaching practice days. Okay, Luis Matt is here. Kelly, Luis Matt is saying Kelly is the best. Yes, he is the best, actually.
Yeah, yes. We just had a good long conversation this week. Hi, Luis. Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you all. So now that we have talked about the challenges, pardon me, I think in reading the questions, in reading the comments, I moved away from my questions. Do you think that there's a better way we could approach this first few weeks of school resumption? Do you think?
Well, you know, when what you were talking about, that, you know, that first days back before students are here, and, you know, a lot of times there's a lot of things we have to do to train people to get them ready. So it's a matter of trying to really prioritize there also. What is it that they need to know to get started and have everything running on day one when kids get back? And then are there things then after that that can be pushed to a little bit later time? Still important, but maybe it's not as important that we need to do right now. And so I think what you just said is really a valuable thing to remember in terms of that pre-planning that goes into before the students even set foot on campus on day one. But I always think also that as a teacher, that when I'm working with my classes, what I always wanted to do was to try to get to know the kids first when they first walked into the room. And for me, you know, I just wanted to get to know who they are. And it's about, I'd introduce myself. I'd say, here's some things I want, you know, we can talk about. And then I would model it, what I wanted to say. And so I would kind of tell them a little bit about myself and who I was, and then go around and have students talk about their themselves to introduce, because we can't assume that everybody knows each other. They don't. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always felt that that was important because that builds community in the classroom. And for the first days really of the school year, that's so important to be able to do. And it gets the school year started. All the lessons and everything that are going to happen after that about the learning and the curriculum, that's going to happen in time. But building community, that first
At the
moments when
beginning.
kids are first there is just so important, right? And so to get the buy-in and to build relationships is something that's really important, I think. And then I think it's also important to set the tone right at the beginning of the year. And so the first day, I always have things to do for the students, and I want to make sure that it's about learning. I don't want to say, well, oh yeah, we'll get ready tomorrow, free day now. It doesn't work that way. And so, I want to set the bar high and get them going and get them started. And the main thing for me is to make the learning fun and engaging. I want them to feel good because I want those kids to come back on day 2. And I want them to feel happy
Yeah.
about coming back. And so if I can do all those 3 things, help to build community and help to get the work going and get the academic expectations going the first day, and that they feel engaged and want to come back on day 2, then I feel like it's been successful.
Mm. I like that part about building community, so I'm putting it here because that was going to lead me to the next question. But I think you have answered it about how to start right in building a relationship with the learners. Can you share with us some of the activities that you do to build a community apart from telling them about yourself? Do
Mm-hmm.
you have any activities that they engage in? If yes, would you share,
Yeah.
please?
I always started off with building a class when I was I was a high school teacher. So I would
Okay.
start off the year by having kind of like a class constitution. And so
Okay.
that set the tone. So
I
we
call
had
them ground rules.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's the same idea. And so we
Yeah.
have the basic, what's the overall goal for our year? What do we want to have as learners in this classroom? We'd have some basic ground rules, just like what you've said about here's what our
Mhm.
expectations are and how we're going to work together in the room. And then also I wanted students to voice what goals that they had. And so we would
Goals.
always start the year with that. And when we were finished and have gotten everything that we wanted in there, and we all agreed that this is what we would do, then I had every student and me sign it. And so I put it
Yes,
up as
I
a
do that
poster
too.
and have it up on the wall so that kids could see it. And then I'd refer back to it throughout the year so that students would know. And so sometimes when things happen and didn't quite work as I was supposed to in the classroom, then I could point back to that and I could say, well, is that what we talked about as part of our expectations for the year?
Mm.
And so it helped to keep us focused and keep our learning aligned and moving forward and reminding us about the purpose of what we've all agreed upon. So that I felt like always was a worthwhile activity, and it took usually at least the full first period, or the first time that we're together, and maybe even the second time as a class that we're together to set those expectations. But then once it's set, then it really gets the classroom moving in a way that everybody can appreciate and support.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So you mentioned that you have the rules. So I mean, what do you have
Yes,
as your
so
ground
the
rules? How
first
do you do
day, we call them ground rules. We agree on the ground rules for the classroom, and I ask learners to share their opinions. These opinions are what we put together as ground rules. I also share mine. I share my expectation of them. I ask them to share their expectation of me as well. So all
that?
this guide us in coming up with our ground rules. The ground rules will be written out and then displayed in a prominent class, a part of the classrooms. And for the
Yeah.
first few weeks, at least the first 3 weeks of the term, we go over the ground rules every day.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a say, it is said that to learn a new habit, you have to do that habit for at least 21 days. So we go over it for at least the first 3 weeks or first month of the term. Now, as we're setting ground rules, we also agree on consequences and penalties.
That's a
At
good.
that
That's a good
point,
one.
I only serve as a moderator. They come up with penalties. If I feel that the penalty is too stiff, I will let them know, oh, no, 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 that's too excessive. Can we reduce it to this? Can we go with this instead? And then the penalties are also stated for the learners to see. After the first few weeks of going over it every day, we don't go over it every morning after that point. Instead, it's already ingrained in the learner. So once there's an infringement, there'll be a classmate reminding the learner of the penalty. Or sometimes you can just see the learners serving the penalty. For example, um, we use what I call a reading journal in my English classes. It's a second English notes, and we agree on this. So once your reading journal is forgotten at home, the penalty is you stand for the first 10 to 15 minutes of the lesson. So sometimes I just see someone standing and then I would wonder, why are you standing? I think on my reading journal. Oh, okay, so you're serving the penalty already. I don't have to say anything at that point. I don't have to. So it actually makes classroom management easier.
Yeah.
And the learners also see themselves as part of the decision-making process, as part of the community. So they take responsibility right from the beginning. It makes my work easier as a teacher, I mean.
Yeah. Well, and that's the part of it is where it's really setting the standards and everybody buys into that and they accept that. And if they know that they've not done quite the right thing, then it doesn't take a lot to refer back to it, because just like your student, he already knew he didn't do what he was supposed to. And so he was just automatically took the penalty upon himself because he's taking responsibility. And that's what we really are teaching. I wasn't teaching when I was teaching. I was taught history and English, and I wasn't teaching the subject. I was trying to teach students to be responsible, so that they're going to grow up to be responsible young women and men. That was the whole thing. And so, yeah, I like what you say there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let's go out of the classroom a bit to the larger school community. What are some common issues that schools face in recent times, especially the schools where you have been the leader?
Well, there's certainly a lot of different things. I mean, I think that there's three things that come to mind right away that I think of, and so one, I think, is that as educators, we face more and more higher expectations from families, and I think that is
Very
ever
true.
increasing. I think that's especially true. Not sure in your experiences of what you've had in Nigeria, but in the pandemic, when so many classes were online, that parents could see what was happening in the classroom. So now they have a certain kind of familiarity with the learning and the lessons that are going on. And so they have high expectations. I think most parents liked what they saw, but they also have high expectations for even more, because they know that kids are in a world where there's going to be high expectations for them when they get older and eventually leave school, move on to college, then world of work and careers. And so those expectations are a bar that's set higher and higher and higher. I think that another thing that comes about is AI in the classroom. And I mean, we certainly can't. AI has just changed everything and how learning works. I just saw something really interesting. It was a college professor who teaches English and writing, and he was talking about how it's changed the process of how we write and how we approach writing. And so, back when I was a student in public school, and when you were a student, and how you learned how to write is dramatically different than what our students today are learning because of the technology that's available in AI. And it's not just writing, it's also how they approach academics and thinking and so on. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, it's just different. And we have to adapt to that as a school and how we're going to do that. And it's so new that we haven't yet met quite a common understanding of what we need, what that even means. So like that professor that I mentioned earlier, he's studying articles about what does that look like? What does AI look like, and how does that impact learning? And so I think that's another thing that's really important. I think the third thing I think about is just, again, is kind of relating to technology, but it's about social media. And as educators and as a school, we really have to be aware of social media. Social media has a lot of good things, but it also can have some things that are a little more concerning. And so sometimes we don't, as educators, sometimes we have to figure out how we're going to separate our lives, our public lives as educators, from our private lives as people. And we have to think about how we connect to families and how we connect to students. And sometimes that's not always a very healthy thing to do if it blurs that line between our professional and our personal worlds when we're educators. So all those things, a little bit technology related, but I certainly think those are pretty powerful factors shaping our schools and how we educate people today.
Okay, you mentioned social media. Is there a way we can use social media to our advantage as educators, not the school itself, not as educators? For instance, um, in terms of communication with parents, and do you think it's ethical for parents and teachers to be connected on social media?
Well, I don't advocate one-on-one connections exactly. I don't think that that's healthy, because I do think that teachers need their private lives and parents also need their private lives. So we all do. So I prefer that people are communicating through email, and then when they need to meet in person or have a meeting, they can either do it like what we're doing here through some kind of a social media app that allows us to communicate, or we can have a meeting in person. That's good. But just to do it through some kind of a messenger type of thing, I don't think that that's a healthy kind of relationship to have. I even think email sometimes can be a little too immediate, when people are upset about something or they want immediate answers and they don't get that, then it sometimes can be a little bit of a problem. But I think it's important to set boundaries about what's expected and how to communicate. It's also about child safety, and I don't want to
Sure,
see
sure.
students put in a room with even a chat room with an adult unless there's other adults present also. And I don't really want. I just think that social media can be a very good thing, and it allows for good communication, and that's a great part of it. But it also has opportunity for abuse as well, and taking advantage of the situation, which is not a good thing, and that's not a healthy thing. We don't want that. The teacher here also has to set the clear boundaries of what they're willing to do in working with the parents and working with students, and then they've got to enforce that. And that's sometimes a little hard to do because they have to have their own voice from within to be able to speak up and say what they want.
Hmm. Hmm.
What do you find?
Okay, it's not so straightforward. I put it that way because in order to get parents buy-in and parents to be a part of the community, schools have WhatsApp groups for parents to engage, but there are often rules guiding these groups anyway, so that they are not abused. But the thing is, once you have that group, parents can save or parents can reach out, to their children's teachers via WhatsApp. So they bypass the email request or the email method to chat on WhatsApp. So that line is a bit blurred because of that. And so what it also means is when the teacher then posts on his or her WhatsApp status, for instance, parents can view it, even if it's personal to that teacher. So it appears that while we're trying to communicate, create a better community with our parents, we're also eroding some of the teacher's privacy. And some parents then see it as an opportunity to chat up teachers late in the night or during weekends. And they would be offended that the teacher did not reply on a weekend.
Yeah.
I guess that's also part of the disadvantages of COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we use WeChat.
Yes.
Here we use WeChat instead of WhatsApp.
Yes, I remember.
Not quite as much connection in the way that you described that WhatsApp has, but certainly if people were in a room.
Yes, WhatsApp has more connection than WeChat.
Yeah. So that's a little different. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that the COVID situation changed the way we use media, and both as families, students, and parents, definitely. I mean, and as educators, because we used it so much during that time, we had to. And so now we used it a lot, but then there's different expectations that we have now somewhat because of that too, which is not always a healthy thing, but we have to, I think as teachers and as educators, we've got to set the boundary and really kind of support, what we're trying to say, and we're not connecting and so on to do that. But here's the way to connect. Here's the way that we will, and we can do this, and here's what we can't do. And that's a little hard to do, I know, but it's something I think that if we want to have our own well-being, we have to do it.
Yes, that's very important. Thank you. Bianca also agrees with you, Mr. Ridings, about establishing boundaries. That we need to establish boundaries in the mode of communication. Yes, yeah. If not, we'll talk about burnout shortly. So are there some tips you also like to share with us?
I was going to also add that I think with the boundaries, it's sort of like with the students at the beginning of the year, we're setting boundaries about what expectations are in the classroom. And then when we meet with the parents at the beginning of the year, then we set also expectations. Just as parents sometimes are going to say, well, here's what I would like to see happen in the classroom, or I'd like with my child. And that's good. So at the beginning of the year, it's important to set those boundaries, because that's going to set the tone for the whole year. For everybody.
So would you share with us your strategies for avoiding burnouts? I'm not a pro in that area. It's something I am learning to do.
Well, that's an ongoing work in progress.
Okay. So I'm not the only one here.
Oh, no.
But I think boundaries are one of the things that can help. Setting boundaries. We might also consider, even when it's absolutely necessary to take work home, maybe there should be a time frame to when the work will be done. Because I discovered that, so let's say it's a weekend, I took some work home on Friday. I've discovered that when I don't watch it or set reminders, I can be on my computer working all through the weekend right till late on Sunday night. And then I resume on Monday morning, and my staff go, "Ma'am, you look exhausted." On Monday morning.
Yeah.
So I think it's something we need to deliberately work on. It might not be easy, especially because in education, the work never ends. I tell people that in other fields, when you go home, your work stays in the office. But in education, when you go home, your work goes with you. Even if you do not take notes home to mark, you are constantly thinking of how to help that learner, how to improve learning outcomes. So your work goes everywhere as an educator already. So it's important that by ourselves, we learn to stop. We just know that I have to stop. I have to take a break. What I do now is I set lots of reminders on my phone for different things, including when to take a break during a work day. Because in all my years, I have never formally taken a break during school days, during school time. Even when learners are on break, you're still working because there's a place of safeguarding and all that. But what I
Yeah.
now do is I set a reminder so at different times I can just take a walk around. But even that is still working because as I'm walking around, I am looking into classrooms, I am checking those on the playground. At least I take a break from looking at my computer or looking into notebooks or observing a lesson. I'm
Yeah.
just taking a stroll around the premises.
Well, one of the reasons why I wear the watch is because that sets a reminder every hour for me to get up and walk around. And
Yes,
so,
I have that too.
yeah,
So every hour it goes off to remind me to get up and walk around. Yes.
yeah, because it's so
Beautiful.
easy to get just completely roped or just focused in on what it was that we're doing, and then we before we know it, we're like, oh well, here the whole day is gone, or the half, all the morning, and we're just doing so much, and I think there's a psychological thing there. I think it's kind of like we feel guilty because if we get up and take care of ourselves for a moment, well, somehow we're guilty of not working hard, not doing enough. And we have to learn, though, that we've got to take those breaks and have the boundaries, and setting a priority. So what I found that when I was still working in the schools is that I would say, when people would ask about meetings and things, and if it was toward the end of the very, very end of the day, I'd be like, well, is this an emergency? If it is, okay, then maybe we can meet. But if it's not an emergency, maybe we can put that till tomorrow. And it's something that we have
I'm going
to
to be deliberate
learn
about
to
that.
prioritize. Pardon?
I'm going to be deliberate about what you have just said now. If it's not an emergency, push it to the next day.
Yeah. And the same thing with the parent, when the parent emails or messages, well, is this an emergency? Then I'm fine to help with that. But if it's just a simple question, well, then, that can come at another time to answer that and to respond the next day or the next morning. And, even if a student was to respond. I think that there's also the psychology that if, as a teacher, I remember I would pack up my bag at the end of the day and I'd have my briefcase and I'd have all the papers that I needed to grade and whatever it is that I'm working on. And then I would walk home carrying all that. And then I'd get home and I'd maybe do some of it, but I'd almost never get all of it that I wanted to. So then I'd be like, oh, what a disappointment. I didn't do all this. And then I feel bad and guilty because I didn't do everything. And then I'd walk back to school the next day carrying all the ungraded papers and all the undone work. And I did this for years. And then at one point I was like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I just carrying these papers back and forth? And then I realized, well, I needed to work smarter at school and I needed to set specific time aside to do some of those tasks. And then if I needed to do something extra at home, okay, then that's fine. But that became an exception rather than the rule. And when I did that, it made for an easier separation of allowing for more personal time at home, which was important to be able to have, because just like you said, you don't want to get to school on Monday morning and everybody going, well, what's wrong with you? You look so tired and you should be rested. And we're not.
Yeah. Now that you say it, I remember that. So I've always been this goal-getter. So from when I was a teenager, I always set goals. Every day, even when I was on holiday, I had a plan for each day. And then I carried that over into work when I started working. But at some point, I don't know how I fell off the wagon, but I stopped setting goals I stopped planning. I just went into work each day, did everything I could. At a point, I realized that I constantly lagged behind in completing my tasks, and then I started doing what you were doing. I'll take work home, pack so many books in my car, go home with them. I would sometimes not get any done or get some done, but most will come back undone. And I was becoming disgruntled, dissatisfied, and constantly upset.
Yeah.
Then I prayed about it and I realized I stopped doing something that was helping me. I just didn't realize how helpful it was. I stopped setting weekly goals. So I went back to it again. And then in setting the goals, I make sure that I keep Monday light. Let's say that I try not to set too many goals per day. So if other days have 3 goals, I keep Monday light with just one major goal or 2 goals, especially because on Monday, I also tend to have review meetings. So since I knew that I would have review meetings, I would set either one major goal or 2 smaller goals for Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday might have 4 goals each. Thursday would have 3, and Friday would have 1 or none. That was because sometimes you may not be able to complete the goals for a particular day in that one day. So I kept Friday, or I still do, keep Friday light. The only thing that I tend to put on Friday is either review of the week or to complete my weekly report. If my weekly report does not start on Friday, even though my submission date is Friday, I don't start it on Friday morning. I start my weekly report as early as Wednesday. Sometimes I even start it on Monday. It's a template of several pages. So I just open it on Monday. As I complete each task, I input the details in my weekly report. So sometimes by Thursday, I'm done with the report, but I still wouldn't send till Friday. Or by Friday morning, I'm done and I'm reading through. Now for my goals, by Wednesday, midday thereabouts, I review my goals. So I check, where am I? Am I on track? Have I completed for each day? So that whatever I haven't done that I need to bring forward, I can bring it forward into Wednesday or reschedule it for Thursday or Friday morning. With that, I discovered that I get my work done on time. I have more time on my hands afterwards. That doesn't mean I should now pack in more work because that would lead to burnout. But it gives me space to do other things and to deliver on my goals. I've had people ask me, how do you do it? I mean, we have the same tasks, but you always complete your task, you're always turning your report, and I'm struggling here. So I just share it with them. Because you can set goals. If you don't take time to review your goals during the week, from at least once, review where you are. You find out that even though you set goals, you still wouldn't meet up. Because as educators, especially if you're a school leader, you have a lot of unplanned things that keep coming up. A parent can walk in to make a complaint, walk in to see you. A stakeholder from the community might have an issue to discuss with the school. Government officials may visit unannounced and may take all your time. I've had government officials visit before, and by the time the person was leaving, it was past my closing time. And the person came in the morning.
Yeah.
So what helped me to get back on track was the fact that I set my goals. I simply reviewed the next morning and rescheduled the goal, and I was still able to complete the tasks for that week. Then one common trap is when you have a long deadline to leave the task till later. I don't do that. I schedule it to do the task as early as possible, so that in the event that I would need extra time, I have sufficient time to still meet up and finish the task before the deadline, than leaving it till close to the deadline, then falling short. So maybe I should just say I consistently set high goals and targets for myself, and I ensure I meet it. that can make me a bit of a challenge as a boss, I know, because then I expect my team to do the same. In other words, I expect them to also set high goals and targets for themselves and reach them. But I've grown over the years to be more accommodating and to help them meet their goals. So, yes, we set the goals together. I would also be there to provide the support needed for you to meet your goals and possibly exceed them.
Yeah.
So that's what helps me.
Well, I like the idea that I'm reminded of that joke. How do you eat an elephant? And well, it's one bite at a time. So you've got that big task that's going on ahead of you, and just like you said, sometimes when that deadline is far away, and you think, oh yeah, there's lots of time, get all that done, but I try to think about, okay, how do I break that task up into little parts and get
Mm,
that done, and
done.
when do
Yeah.
I need to have those different parts finished, so I plan that out a little bit, and like you say, review where I am and getting that thing done and meeting those little goals. And then when I know that I'm a little bit farther behind, okay, then I've got to put a little more effort into getting it done the next week, for example. But then at least I'm keeping on track. And so then when the thing comes to the end, we're not running around going, oh, I can't get it all done. And no, and we've definitely been, and we feel good about the work that we have done and we've completed. And
Mm,
that's, again, goes back to that psychological thinking of, okay, we want to feel accomplished in what we're getting
true.
done.
True.
We don't want to feel overwhelmed, but when we just kind of work from here to here to here to here and doing everything all at once, well, then we accomplish nothing. I always say if we have 10 goals, we have no goals because we're not going to accomplish
Yes.
10 things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Would you like to share a few words in closing? Final words now.
Well, being a teacher is very, very hard work, and it is. And being an educator is hard work. And whether we're working with the very littlest kids all the way up into college level, and even if we're training adults to do things, it's not easy because we're training for the future, and that's hard, and it takes a lot of effort. I really like what you said, that we're caring so much about what we're doing, and we part time and just shut it all off when we go home at the end of the day. We go, oh, okay, 5 o'clock, time to go home. And it doesn't just work that way. We're still thinking about the world, our work world. We're still thinking about what we need to do. And so it's hard to do, but we as educators have to set that time aside to be self-caring, and the work is hard, but it's not going to get finished tomorrow. It's ongoing. It's always going. And so there's time to get things done. It doesn't have to be perfect to get done. And so it's going to, I would say, well, if it's due at 3 o'clock or our next event comes up at 3 o'clock, well, that's whether we're ready or not. So the best of it that we've got. And we everything we can to make sure that it's as good as we can do it. And if it's learn for the next time, so that it'll be better time around. And it always is. And that's what I like about that. So education, we always get a chance. This is the time we get to do. We got started. There's no other profession really other than maybe professional sports. There's a new year every season, and so we have that now with our school. We start and have a brand new school year and have brand new subject for teaching. I'm working the brand new school, and to start new, start fresh. From the past as well.
I think it's my network. I didn't get the last part of the final words, but I'm sure I'll get it in the replay. Thank you so very much, Kelly, for doing this. I wish you all the best in your new adventure. I'm sure you will do great. because you have what it takes. You're amazing. You're an amazing school leader and educator. Thank you to everyone who joined this live and to everyone who would watch the replay or the stream on the other channels. This live is also streaming on Instagram and on YouTube. We wish you a successful school year, a successful and an impactful school year. Impactful for you, impactful for your learners. We want you to know that you're not alone in this journey of education. We know that it's not easy. We have been there, we are still there with you, and we wish you the very best. Remember the things you have learned in this session. Have a plan for every part of your work, especially a weekly plan. As you resume, the things that are not critical, especially for school leaders, the things that are not critical, please leave them later in the term. You don't have to do everything in the first 2 weeks of resumption. Focus on building a community in your classroom from the beginning. Let the learners know that you care about them. Tell them a bit about yourself. Tell them your expectations of them and ask for their expectations of you. Just as you have expectations of the learners, they also have an expectation of their teacher. So ask, as a leader, ask your team how you can support them, how you can support better, and how you can help them meet up with the demands of work or the goals that they have. Together, set goals and agree on a way forward. Have the goals displayed in a prominent place and constantly refer to them. For your weekly goals, remember not to set too many goals for each day so you don't get overwhelmed or end up with nothing. A few goals per day, and remember to track those goals. You are doing great, and we know that you have what it takes to succeed. Have an excellent school year. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Toyosi. Thank you, everyone. Have a good school year ahead. Good year to all of us.
Thank you. All right. Bye.